Proportional Response, Book 1. Chapter 13, Part 5. The Eyes That Do Not See. A continuation of the report by the Zoltans of the one joint maneuver exercises ever held between the Confederation and Zoltan military. One would have expected, after the dressing down that the Lord General gave the humans, and as much as they rolled their eyes in understanding, that the next exercise would have gone better. It did not. The video is available, so I won't go into great detail. Suffice it to say that the making the plan and passing of orders phases went much the same as previously, with the humans indicating they understood, then almost completely ignoring their assigned movement. This battle ended much faster, however. When the two armies reached the middle of the field, a human NCO, yes, an enlisted man, radioed back to his lieutenant that he had seen an opening and was taking it, then proceeded to take his fire team and run directly through the field at the opposing command tent. The lieutenant responded not by disciplining the man or trying to call him back to his proper position, but by giving orders to cover the mutineers' actions and sending word to the human general. Yes, directly to the top of their chain of command, from a lieutenant, why he was making changes. The general's response was just as baffling. He did nothing, simply took the report and sent a few orders down to make sure the lieutenant in question had some support. Yes, you read that right. The sergeant did not ask permission, did not even wait for his superiors to give him leave to act. He just took his men and ran, and his superiors supported his action. Unfortunately, the sergeant's move paid off, and his team managed to take the opposing command tent, bringing, to my shame, victory for my team. The Lord General was, of course, furious. He had, wisely, planned his maneuvers using only his Coltons as real troops, and counted the humans as fodder, given their demonstrated inability to follow even simple orders, and had carefully laid his plans so that any gaps in his formations would be closed before a proper chain of command could react to them. The human general tried to make excuses for his men, to his shame, but the Lord General would have none of it, and brusquely called for everyone to reset the field. Once again, I found myself in my tent, attempting to explain proper orders and maneuvers to the human general, when the horn to begin sounded. The human then asked me a single question which, in retrospect, I might have been better off refusing to answer. He asked, if that horn was the signal to start creating and handing down the plan, what was the signal to actually take the field? I explained that part of the point of war games was to test the ability of officers to quickly and efficiently plan an attack and to relay orders to their men, and that part of my impatience with his inability to grasp proper maneuvers was a fear that our opponents would beat us to the field. The human gave a feral grin, which I almost took as a challenge. Then he turned to his chief underling and nodded. The man gave a similar smile and nodded back, then departed the tent. I did not, at that moment, consider what I'd seen important. Now, however, it gives me my one small concern about the time when we must, in our role of caretakers and protectors of civilization, inevitably face off against these barbarous humans. That fear is that they may have some sort of telepathic ability. At that moment, however, I decided to let the major leaving the command tent without my permission slide and turned to formulating our battle maneuvers. My officers and I had barely begun, however, when I heard the horn which signaled a victory by my team sounding. This was impossible, of course, so I ignored it and continued to plan. Unfortunately, the horn had not been sounded in error. In a few short minutes, the Lord General came into my tent with his claws out and eyes just short of showing a tint of red. He demanded to know why I had sent my humans to attack, but the human general stepped up and revealed he had given that order. The conversation which followed was, to say the least, unpleasant, and ended up with all parties concluding that further joint exercises would not be productive. Once again, if one is curious as to the specifics of what was discussed, The video is available. In conclusion, the humans obviously lack the military discipline and intelligence to properly succeed in a war against us. The officers seem to believe that in a real war, with actual weapons, their soldiers will actually move against the enemy without an officer pushing them to do what they must. The fact that they seem to hold this belief, despite all of our attempts to enlighten them, is baffling for a supposedly intelligent species. No further investigation into the humans or their military capabilities seems necessary. High General Lord Shirano reporting. Addendum by Major Sprasa Mendes. Every detail the High General reported is correct. Every conclusion he came to is wrong, based largely on a terribly flawed premise at the end of his report. Human soldiers do not need their officers to push them to fight. In fact, evidence would suggest that human officers exist as much to hold their soldiers back from reckless actions as any other reason. The Zoltan High Command must re-evaluate its military procedures to deal with the new threat these humans pose. If we do not, we will lose when the shooting starts. Yes, I know this addendum is likely going to cost me my career, and probably see me posted to some asteroid listening station on the ass end of known space. So be it. I have a duty to report what I know and see. Also, if I am, in fact, permanently assigned somewhere that far out of the line of fire, I will have no part of the debacle that will happen when we finally decide to go to war with the humans, and that is fine too. Major Sprasa Mendes, preparing the report for the High Lord General and the Lord General. Caslor couldn't help but laugh as he read the end of the report. He waited for the others to finish reading before he spoke. Okay, I don't understand what linking these two documents together has to do with the Findle ambassador who is sitting in my office shaking so hard her feathers are falling out. Henry hit a few buttons and brought up what appeared to be a supply ship of Findle design. We've been looking for Major Mendes for quite some time. Sultans are funny about their documents and reports. They get filed in a format which saves them exactly as written, including any flaws that may be in the document. If anything is to be changed, then there is an amended document filed, but the original will still be there. There was a bit of a stir, as you can imagine, against the Major after this document was filed, and he was, as he had predicted, given a punishment assignment down such a deep hole that we haven't been able to find him. The interesting thing about the stir against the Major is that they attacked him for improperly preparing the formatting of the document. His punishment briefings made a very big deal about the typefacing, spacing, indents where they shouldn't have been, and ignored completely what he actually said. Ambassador Ballard waved a webbed hand. What does the formatting of the document have to do with anything? Henry smiled at him. Everything. The document you see is, obviously, a translation. The original looks strange indeed. To cut to the chase, the Major used the formatting to install a code in the document. A very, very simple message. He wanted us, the humans, to come and find him. As for what that has to do with the Findle, the ship I have here in the display is the one which conveyed the message to the internet. It is a deep space supply vessel, which supplies a number of Sultan listening posts and similar remote locations. You see, there is a funny thing about the Findle and their subservience to the Zoltan, and it is one that the Zoltan voters haven't quite come to properly understand. The Findle view all Sultan as superiors to be submitted to, not just the Zoltan voters, which means that if an Arg Zoltan tells one of them to deliver a message in secret, they will do it. If questioned by another Sultan, they will not simply give up the secret either. Ambassador Galen fluffed his feathers in understanding. So, you believe the Major used this ship, which supplies him, to send out this message in the hopes that you would trace it down and... what? Help him defect? Henry winked at the thermosin. You got it in one, Ambassador. However, we plan to give him a choice, rather than just grab him. The Major was low-born, but his tactical mastery, physical prowess, and social acumen had him on track to ascend to the point of gaining a vote, when he tossed it all in a few lines of text. Our psych profile suggests that he understood the corruption and crisis that the Zoltan are facing, and had plans to try and do something about it, at least on some level. He was a brilliant leader, and popular with the rank and file, but not so popular that his superior officers felt threatened. Now, however, he has an almost cult-like following among the enlisted of the Zoltan fleet, and we have seen a few cases where his former subordinates were disciplined for what amounts to talking too much about how good he was. Caslor had scrolled through the rest of the data on the pad as Henry talked. I see why you want him for that aspect of the plan. Wait, something doesn't add up. How could he know all this about war crimes and your response to them if he got shipped off to tend an outhouse just as you humans showed up? Henry leaned forward. To your comment, the Major is the reason that branch of the plan exists at all. It was conceived with the hope that we could get a hold of him and he would be amenable. We have a route to the first part of that hope. To your question, we believe that those loyalists have been in secret communication to him, and that he has won over the final captain who supplies his station, so that he is kept up to date on the current news. So, you want me to go back to that final and tell her that she is to get a message to this man that... What? We want him to lead a rebellion? No, my friend. We want you to play this video, tell her that you see no threat, and send her packing. Tell her that she should talk to the other sapient who was there. Ambassador Garn, we want you to explain to her that we wish to be put in contact with her government directly, and that it may be time for her to consider retirement. When that happens, we want this memory crystal conveyed to the Major. It contains a very simple message, that we will not be extracting him, but we will provide him with support once the shooting starts.